Hello everybody, hopefully this now should be working and it should be updating in a couple of seconds. See what the lag is like. There we go. Yes, the lag's quite slow, so I'm just going to keep talking basically and going through things as we are. Obviously feel free to drop any questions in as we go. And we're just going to crack on with it, okay? So just going to go through the general idea of what we're doing today. I've got the chat up here in front of me, so I've got the Teams chat, so obviously drop any questions you have for me in there. That's great. I can either respond to them on text or audio as well. That's not a problem. It's just making sure that we have everything there for it, okay? The other thing to be aware of, I suppose, as well, is that a couple of times I'm going to switch to some different screens, so that's okay. One of the screens I'm going to be going to quite a lot is this, essentially this Word document here, which should be then realistically the stuff that I'm going to talk you through for the rest of the session. So that's absolutely fine there. So hopefully that should all be okay. And I'm also going to switch most of my time is going to be spent in this screen here, which is a copy of the text. Hopefully it's all right and that we can all see it. So that's what we're going to be using for most of the time. If you could have your texts out now, that would be perfect. Don't look at the page numbers though. My edition is the slightly older edition. So if you could get out your version and find the same thing, just find the start of Act 3, Scene 2. That's where we're going to go from. Okay, so that's realistically going to be the page that we operate from for the majority of this stream. Simply because it's the easiest one for me to work with and the easiest one for me. Obviously I can point to stuff as well, and then obviously if we need to we can drop back to the things. I've also got, guys, anytime we get some specific AO3 content, I'll just pop up this AO3 thing here, and likewise for AO5, and we can then talk about them as they come up. I've also identified a couple of the key themes for the scene. So the four for today are as follows. There we go. So power and control, sin and punishment, humour, performance and acting. So those are most of the things that we're going to be talking about. Obviously we're also going to come up with some things as we go, and you will also want to be thinking about, I would imagine, some of the stuff we talked about last week when we were in, when we looked at specifically the treatment of Ophelia in the play. So I now can't remember what any of the hotkeys for those themes were, so we'll come back to them as we go. That's fine. So hopefully this is all good to go. If we're all ready, let's crack off. So the scene opens a kind of indeterminate amount of time after Act 3, Scene 1. We have that nice line at the end from the king, as you see here. The madness in great ones must not unwatched go. It's a good line to kind of focus on, thinking about kind of the way in which you can say the king there, kind of really kind of addressing the kind of key concerns that he has at this point in the play. And then obviously we have this time jump, and we open immediately with Hamlet here, addressing the players. 3 of the players are listed. However, realistically, you only really see interaction with one specific one. He's not given a name on them. Again, it's any of the actors that are playing the players, so don't really worry too much about that. So he starts this and he opens with basically all of this content essentially is what I would refer to as instruction. He's basically giving instructions to the actor how to, sorry for the focusing on the camera, I'll see if I can get that locked in rather than auto-focusing. If you give me 1 second, just to fiddle around with the camera there. No. Sorry. Sorry for this little pause. And now it's gone completely weird. Sorry. Technical difficulties. That's fun. There you go, guys. Technical difficulty number 1. But that should all be okay. Right, there we go. Sorry. There we go. That will do for now. That is frustrating. Never mind. Well, this is going swimmingly. I will leave that alone from now on. Okay, fine. Back to this. So, let's move that there. Sorry. Fine. Getting back to it. So, it's instructions to the actors. And essentially he's giving them a kind of instruction. This is, guys, obviously a huge link to that theme of meta theatre. Okay, so the meta theatre thing is absolutely important here, guys. So this whole section is meta theatrical. That has to be kind of one of the dominant things that I would be talking about if I were you in this particular scene. He is essentially instructing actors in the play how to perform a play, while obviously they are performing a play for an actual audience watching the play Hamlet itself. So hopefully you can see the multiple levels of interaction there, and you can see the way in which these characters are kind of talking to one another. Realistically, it's kind of mocking, I would suppose, of somewhat of the kind of tropes, I suppose, of kind of Renaissance theatre. He specifically starts the speech by talking about playing the speech naturally. He says trippingly on the tongue, as he specifically pronounces it, and he wants to avoid this kind of overly kind of hammy performance. He talks about, I had as leave the town crier speak my lines. Basically, don't just shout it out. Don't ruin my theatre. Don't ruin the theatre. Try and keep it all nice and calm, as he says. Don't make too many hand gestures. He says don't saw the arm too much. Don't wave around. Don't ham it up. Play it naturally. And that's the key thing. He said, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to split the ear of the groundlings, who for the most part, as he says, are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. Now this is a joke obviously at the expense of the groundlings, who we know would be watching this, but themselves perhaps not really capable of actually necessarily understanding everything that's going on. Okay, so he's kind of making fun of the audience. He's making fun of actors, and he knows this nice line. He says, "I would have such a fellow whipped for overdoing Termagant. It out Herod's Herod." So he kind of basically, don't be comically evil, don't be overly good, just perform as people are. Now this gives us a nice insight into how Shakespeare wants his own theatre to be read. This perhaps might be a comment on Shakespeare's own kind of decisions, bearing in mind obviously he's writing this play. These might be instructions for his own actors, or like a kind of self-aware joke about how actors sometimes kind of ruin theatre, essentially. Okay, the player's like, fine, I warrant your honour. He's like, I'll do what you say, and then that's okay. He does, however, obviously say don't go too calm though. Keep it personal. Keep it emotional. He says, let your own discretion be your tutor. Basically, just suit what you're doing to what's going on. Try as it says, and hold the mirror up to nature to show virtue her feature. So basically, trying to reflect nature. That's the key point here. Okay, guys. I'll kind of pause a second for anybody who's got any questions on that section. To go through any questions on that section, guys. Let me know at any point. As a quick reminder, while we're here, the obvious thing is that this way. We've got a couple of quick reminder of what you're doing this week on the side. Okay, so assuming there are no questions, I will keep on moving back onwards. So let's move on with the play. Hamlet continues his speech and doesn't really get much, too much more out of this. Much of it kind of stands on as it was before. Nothing really we will learn above and beyond what we've already looked at there. Is pretty much the kind of gist of the scene. Okay, it's fine. It's really useful, as I said, for meta theatre early on. So if we can find it, if we can find that, yeah, that's fine. Cool. So there's a bit of humour, obviously, will be the key theme to note down here if I was jotting down anything here, and as well as that, the theme of performance and acting. So those are our kind of two key themes for this section of text. These two themes are going to keep running on throughout this whole section. So as it moves onwards, we then have the entrance, as you can see. Once they've all kind of gone like, yep, we're going to do what we're going to do, Polonius, Guildenstern and Rosencrantz all enter. And they basically start setting up the play itself. Horatio joins, Polonius comes in and out, and we have Horatio joining here. I'm not going to spend too much time going through this section, but what I would say very quickly is that what Horatio and Hamlet do here is go through the plan that Hamlet has. I'll let you go through this speech yourselves. It's pretty straightforward, but essentially Hamlet reminds us of the speech of the plan that he's already got in store for the king. So Horatio kind of knows what's happening with this, which is interesting. This is the first character that Hamlet's talked to about his plan, and this is also obviously then the first character that Hamlet has kind of opened anything really up to as well, which is nice. It gives Horatio a bit of an insight. It gives Hamlet a bit of an outlet as well in the play. So obviously Horatio is like, okay, fine, I'm going to go along with this plan. I'll do whatever you want with us. That's all good. You know, we'll all do this here. That's fine. So that's pretty useful. All the other characters then enter here with trumpets and kettle drums. So, you know, the king's entrances are often, if not always, accompanied by some kind of, you know, pageantry or something like that. Here in this case, it is him, Polonius, the Queen, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Ophelia's here. All the characters coming onto stage. So that's all good. So as we move on to the other side, Hamlet essentially kind of acknowledges to Horatio, look, you know, everyone's coming in. Let's get our seat seated, make it all look kind of natural. That's all good. And, you know, we have the kind of generic kind of like, you know, greetings. You know, King goes back to our cousin Hamlet. All of our normal kind of pleasantries resumed. Hamlet's still slightly acting a wee bit mad. He's still kind of keeping up that pretense, which is good. Nice kind of thing. Again, guys, that kind of performance and acting already coming into it here. Hamlet's kind of maintaining this madness as we go, which is quite a nice kind of feature of the scene as always. And then we have this nice bit of specifically performance and acting and some more humour content as well, when we have this conversation with Polonius at the bottom. So this is a conversation, I think we talked about it already in class, but I'll go over it again. Polonius here talks about how he acted previously at the university, and he's like, yep, I did a good job. Hamlet says then, okay, you know, what did you enact? And Polonius enacted, as he says here, Julius Caesar. So he enacted the role of Julius Caesar in the play. So that on its own is, you know, fine. There's a kind of stuff that we're going to talk about this in a second. But also, guys, as a bit of context, so as a reminder, guys, AO3, as a nice bit of context, this is a kind of another meta-theatrical allusion to the fact that the actor who would originally have performed the role of Polonius had the previous year himself performed the role of Julius Caesar in Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, which, you know, as I said, probably about a year or two before Hamlet was written. So a nice kind of awareness for the audience there. Hamlet himself here says, takes on this joke about being a brute part of it. It was Brutus, the main conspirator, who set up this the murder of Julius Caesar. So I'm going to quickly just go over here now, and we'll just have a quick switch over to have a look at this. So here obviously we have Julius Caesar there. So a quick reminder, Julius Caesar, guys, was essentially a dictator of Rome, and somebody who realistically got his way all the way to the top of society through using his political abilities. He was a schemer, a manipulator, very much the kind of, you know, cunning politician. And he himself was killed by a group of conspirators, notably Brutus, who we mentioned here. Okay, so that's all that. So with that in mind, I think the key thing to remember with that then is that you've got a character, Polonius, himself very much associated with acting, who is himself obviously associated here with this figure of Julius Caesar, who himself used the same kind of political manipulative techniques to get into power and status or whatever else. Separately to that as well, Hamlet here, the actor that was playing Hamlet in this production, in the original production, would also have played Brutus in the original production, in the production of Julius Caesar as well. So that then obviously feeds into Hamlet's role in Act 3, Scene 4, where he kills Polonius. So nice and straightforward. Now the scene kind of takes a bit of a turn. They all sort themselves out, and I want to go back to those kind of ideas I suppose we had earlier of realistically those ideas that we had looked at last time in terms of Hamlet's treatment of Ophelia. Having previously spent the last scene kind of essentially reprimanding Ophelia for her sexuality and for her wantonness or whatever you want to call it, Hamlet instead here spends his time essentially flirting with and making sexual remarks to Ophelia as a character. It gets pretty explicit, like really explicit, and it seems kind of completely at odds with the way in which Hamlet has treated her in the previous scene. So it's the idea of Hamlet using Ophelia, I suppose, as a tool and playing on her own kind of sensibilities as part of this scene. It kind of extends that relationship. So just to kind of go through, most of the jokes are explained at the bottom in your footnotes, but he essentially chooses Ophelia as a kind of close things. He asks to whether he should lie in her lap. She obviously rejects that. You would probably naturally, had you just had what Hamlet said to you in the previous scene anyway, and then Hamlet directly takes it straight to about as explicit as you can get with his joke here. Do you think I meant country matters? Country matters, the joke here is about as crude as you can go, essentially referencing female genitalia using that first syllable of the word country. So it's pretty heavy going. Ophelia basically shrugs it off like she does everything else. I think nothing, my lord. Basically kind of passes it off, and that's okay. So she kind of keeps going. And then Hamlet continues the joke by punning on the word nothing. Nothing at the time, perhaps contextually, a reference again to female genitalia. So it's pretty obvious that Hamlet's kind of just messing around with her in this scene. And as it goes on, Hamlet kind of keeps playing up to his madness and keeps extending a lot of his kind of extensions. There's a nice bit here where he talks about and the kind of ambiguity of the time in the play is really reinforced. He talks about it being essentially his father dead within 2 hours, which obviously, in literal time, his father would have been dead within 2 hours. I suppose there's a bit of meta theatre, but Ophelia kind of corrects him. No, it's 2 months. And Hamlet's like, well, hang on a minute. This is all kind of a bit much, and he kind of reaffirms back to those themes of mourning we had at the start of the play. He then does some more mad stuff. I'm not going to go too much into more of the mad stuff. It's all here. That's fine. And then the players come in ready to do their play. Any questions at this point? I'll give you a couple of seconds to ask any questions. And then we're going to keep going. And we'll move on. So the players arrive, and they essentially perform the dumb show. We don't have much in the text here for the dumb show. What I'd really like you to do is to go over and to watch a version of Hamlet and just have a look at the dumb show versions. It's quite nice to have a look at various interpretations. I've not got a lot to say on that at this point necessarily. Okay, so the dumb show realistically it is what it is. Would traditionally be performed anyway with theatre, and most of it is kind of explained in the content we looked at with the Duchess of Malfi. It works on a very similar level, so hopefully that's okay. As I said, the dumb show key here. This is definitely AO3. Certainly AO3, given that dumb show. It's core to the revenge tragedy. It's right in the center of the play. This is the center of the narrative. It's the big climactic moment. Here we've got performance of a play within the play. This play itself, obviously, the dumb show, and a really nice bit of interactive kind of impressive visual content in the middle of the play. So that's that. The play obviously then will proceed onwards from there. Hamlet does a little bit of again, he kind of comments and he starts kind of talking about this. They then do a little prologue to the play itself. So the actors will give a prologue to the narrative itself. Hamlet continues to comment over this. Ophelia's like, this guy's going to do this. He's going to tell us what the show is going to be about. And then Hamlet continues making the sexual jokes. Again, explained in the footnotes. You get the idea. Hamlet just keeps making sex jokes at Ophelia. It is what it is. And then we have the player king and queen come on, and they perform their version of the play. And there's loads of interesting stuff to look at here in terms of language. Again, ideas of performance coming up here. Because the genre changes completely. Well, not the genre, but the style of writing changes completely. I would have a look here at some lines. Let's even just take the opening line as an example. Full 30 times round hath Phoebus. 30 times both. Full 30 times hath Phoebus's cart gone round. So the cycle of the moon, Phoebus's cart, and we essentially have this. Two things to point out here. The next line, Neptune's salt wash and Telus's orbed ground. So what we have here is a couple of things. It's gone into full verse. I mean, this is already iambic pentameter, but now it really is kind of clearly in that structure and style. And we have in some archaic language, which is great. Throughout, you can have a look through loads of archaic languages. All of your doths start kind of cropping up a little bit more. What you also see is rhyming couplets. So the writing is now not only in a meter, but it is now in rhyme. And you'll see that as to kind of fit it in a more poetic style, some of the the sentence structure, the syntax is inverted. Full 30 times hath this thing gone round is obviously not how you would phrase that, and even the characters in the rest of the play would not phrase something in such an archaic style. So the whole thing is completely switched around to distinguish it from the rest of the play itself. Okay, so the play within the play is directly set apart from the play of Hamlet itself, obviously. As I said, it is the centerpiece, I suppose, of the drama. And I suppose then, just to remind us, actually, let's have a think about what it would look like. What we have here, I suppose, is let's have a quick look at this. Later, I think this is the 19th century. Don't quote me on that, but I think this is a 19th century production. And we have this whole setup here of the play within the play. So we've got this really nice idea of the way in which the kind of audience is watching Hamlet, watching the king. Likewise, Horatio here. Everyone watching the play in its own kind of like separate set in the middle, and the king being unable to watch the play because he feels guilty about that. So that's quite a nice way of thinking about this as a kind of really a visual kind of setup and a really kind of significant visual moment in the play. So essentially the king, the player king, the player queen, so player king representing obviously in the real play Hamlet, i.e. old Hamlet, not new Hamlet, old Hamlet, and the player queen representing, standing in for Gertrude essentially. So they start this section realistically with a kind of reaffirming of their love, and essentially, they go onwards to essentially kind of establish how much they love each other, and to kind of commit themselves to being permanently, kind of bound to one another. and she eventually, the player queen, gets on to say, she realistically will stay with, stay faithful to him after death. Obviously, we all know that that's not going to happen. We know that the player king is going to get murdered. It's the murder of Gonzago. That's the name of the play. We remember he set that up in Act 2, Scene 2. But it's a nice kind of reminder to Gertrude, I suppose, watching in the audience, that she should be staying faithful to her dead husband here, contextually. Obviously, again, quick reminder, A3, that kind of remarrying your brother's husband after he dies would be at least regarded incestuous, if not actually incest. So that's a whole thing, just to remind us of, I suppose. So any question? Oh, and obviously at this interruption here, famous line in the play, Hamlet asks his mother, "How do you like the play?" And the Queen's line, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks." Now that's obviously become idiomatic anyway. Like, that has just become a saying that people use, just as a kind of like, colloquialism, almost, I suppose, at this point. But what it is quite nicely here is a reminder that perhaps there's a possibility that Gertrude is kind of guilty. We don't know, obviously, if she is or is she not. Again, it's all down to performance. We can't comment on that. But maybe, maybe she is guilty. The lady does protest too much, methinks. A pretty clear indication here that she might have some kind of guilt associated with what's going on. And Hamlet then pushes this further, to kind of push this idea that the player queen will keep the word that she's kind of committed to. Again, reminding Gertrude that she perhaps hasn't, I suppose. Quite a nice comment on, her infidelity. I'm going to put that in, obviously, inverted commas here. Quite a nice comment on her infidelity there. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hamlet kind of keeps going. He can't keep going much, and at this point he refers to his play and he starts to kind of lose his cool a wee bit. He refers to the play now as the Mousetrap. He says this in response to the king's question, "What do you call this play?" Now Hamlet here perhaps almost getting too cocky, almost getting too confident, and he kind of refers to this the play as the Mousetrap. So we start thinking about perhaps not that one, this power and control. This idea that perhaps Hamlet is almost relishing a wee bit with the control he has over the king at this point. He feels like he's getting the better of him. And it's not much longer until we meet Lucianus. Lucianus here then, again, unsurprisingly an Italian name. Here he is, one Lucianus, nephew to the king. Ophelia draws attention to this line here: "You are as good as a chorus, my lord." You are good as my chorus, my lord. Hamlet makes another sex joke following that, but the important thing about the chorus is obviously that was a particularly kind of common feature. It was a common feature of kind of classical theatre. So the chorus would be a kind of group or group of actors who would essentially run commentary on the narrative. They would tell us what was happening and what was going on during the play. Hamlet here almost kind of essentially narrating his own play. Now, a point to make at this stage would be the point of this whole play was for Hamlet to naturally, and he spent time at the start of this scene, he spent time telling the actors to behave naturally, to perform naturally, to be natural. And then what he starts doing is going, "Oh yeah, well, actually, I'm just going to comment on this play and I'm going to talk to you about it and tell you what happens in it anyway." And it gets worse. Lucianus steals in. Obviously, steal, guys, I'm using that as a verb to mean sneaks. So in he comes in. Basically, monologues. Got this now new pointer here. This is excellent. So he comes in and gives us this essentially monologue about his own villainy. Yeah, here he comes. to poison. He gives us kind of like speech over his poison. The whole speech has been using classical references to gods. Here, Hecate, the god of like witchcraft and magic, is invoked in this poison monologue, and he pours the fake poison. Obviously, this is not real poison. This is a play, into the ears of the player king Hamlet, and then he will die. Well, we assume he will die because we never get to see it. At this point in the play, Hamlet just goes, nope, stop everything. This is the rest of the plot. He goes, and poisons him in the garden for his estate. His name's Gonzaga. The story is extant and written in very choice Italian. You shall see anon how the murderer gets the love of Gonzaga's wife. So he basically just spoils the plot of the play itself. And at that point, the king rises, and we know this obviously through Ophelia's dialogue. There's no stage direction necessarily for this. And the queen is like, hey, hang on, what's going on here? And Polonius is like, no, that's the play over, quit it. Everything kind of basically erupts. Everyone gets up, everyone goes. That's that. Here we're off. This is kind of kicked off. Polonius calls for the lights to be raised. And then everybody but Hamlet and Horatio leaves. Now, at this point, guys, I want to go back to have a quick look back to the Word document. And just a kind of a small step here. Henry Thew Stevenson, as you can see here, argues that the play was an utter failure to compromise the king by the mousetrap. Now, there are a couple of reasons you could think of that might lead to this. The main reason that I would argue for this is that essentially the king only really kind of gets going when Hamlet's already told him what's going on. Yeah. It's more of, now he still gets the guilt ultimately, I suppose, more of an accusation maybe, but Hamlet only really gets a response out of Claudius via what he accuses him of, not the play itself. He doesn't rise until there. So that's an argument that Stevenson makes. There are other things as well. I've put the full link to the essay on the document, so the link to the essay is there, so that's fine. Not sure, so that's all okay, hopefully. But yeah, a useful bit of AO5 there, perhaps. So let's quickly go back to the text. Any questions at this point? Because we're kind of finished with the play within the play now. I'll have a brief pause for questions in the chat. Either chat. I'll leave that a second or two. I'm not going to edit these out either later. These are just going to stay here. Just me waiting. As a quick reminder at this stage, actually, I will say that obviously I will upload these after they've been performed, so that you can come back and revise from them later. Okay, let's crack on. We've got about 20 minutes to go. Oh, is there a document of AO5 quotes? The document I'm showing you right now in the video, so just to go back to it, this document here, Hamlet Act 3, Scene 2 and 3 lesson notes. This is in the Teams chat. Okay, so this is in the Teams chat anyway. I will scroll up to show you wherever I put it. There it is. Okay. So that hopefully is fine. Cool. Oh, if you write about the play in the exam, do you refer to it as the murder of Gonzaga or the mousetrap? Good question. My point would be probably I would refer to it as, well, You could either talk about Hamlet asking the players to perform the murder of Gonzago, or you could ask them to, or if you're talking about like Hamlet, his performance of the Mousetrap, quote unquote, might be a nice way of phrasing that. Yeah, good question. I would probably call it the Mousetrap, unless I was talking about what he asks the players to do specifically. So hopefully that helps answer that question a wee bit there. Okay, right. Cool. I'm going to move on. Let's crack on. So once everyone's gone, Hamlet and Horatio have a chat. Hamlet is like, there it is. I've totally got my, here we go. Boom. I've totally won this. I've seen what happens. I know what's going on. And Horatio seems not wholly convinced. Horatio's like, okay, sure, but I'm not wholly convinced here. As to that, and Horatio's just kind of like, fine, I will just go with you. This is all okay. The next bit that I really want to get to, this is a nice bit, really good stuff. I think a couple of you have already mentioned this before to me, is the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern entrance here. This is the first time in the play that we actually really see Hamlet be directly confrontational to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He'll do it again in Act 4. But at this section, he essentially has this conversation where Rosencrantz and Guildenstern basically come to him and essentially ask him to do some stuff, basically being given their instructions by the king, and Hamlet being aware that they are being directed to do this by the king. And as he goes on through, realistically, Hamlet starts to lose his temper with him. They give him instructions that once they've eventually gotten through all of the kind of like, sycophantic fluff that they tend to kind of start with and whatever they're doing, once they get through all that, what we actually get to is the point where they tell us of what's going to happen in Act 3, Scene 4. They ask us that his mother, Hamlet's mother, Gertrude, desires to speak with Hamlet in her bed, not in her bedroom, in her closet. And this is a key thing, guys. We're going to come back to this next week, but it is not her bedroom. It is a closet, though most versions tend to put a bed in it. We're going to talk about that and Freud next week. And Hamlet's like, cool, I'm going to do that. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern do start to realise here, hang on, I'm not sure that Hamlet is particularly fond of us at the moment. And as we go on, Hamlet has asked for the players to bring him some recorders, and literally it's just like recorders, the instrument, like what you did at primary school, blah blah black sheep, whatever. And Hamlet gets the instruments out. Here they are, the recorders. These would be obviously actual props, stage props, possibly actually props used by the in-house kind of musicians who would exist there just purely to essentially, perform the interval music in the theatre. And that's, quite a nice little bit there. So he gets the recorders, Hamlet, and he then starts essentially directly confronting Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He asks them, hey guys, can you just play on these, just play on this little pipe for a bit, yeah? Just play this pipe, it's fine, yeah? Just play on the pipe. Play on this little recorder. And Guildenstern is like, yeah, can't do that. Nope, can't do it. Hamlet's like, come on, play the instrument. Again, Guildenstern, nope. Hamlet insists again. Nope, I know no touch of it, can't do it. And then Hamlet really lays in here. It is as easy as lying. Govern these ventages with your fingers and thumbs, give it breath with your mouth, and it will discourse most eloquent music. Look you, these are the stops. So he's like, it is really as easy as lying. Yeah, drawing attention, obviously, to his realistic knowledge that they are essentially performing their roles to him, that their friendship, he believes, is insincere. Okay. Guildenstern's like, I don't have the skill to do it. And then Hamlet directly confronts him. Why look you now how unworthy a thing you make of me? You would play upon me. You would seem to know my stops. You would pluck out the heart of my mystery. You would sound me from my lowest note to my compass. And yet there is much music, excellent voice in this little organ. You cannot make it speak, etc., etc. Yeah, the lovely line at the end. Call me what instrument you will, though you fret me, you cannot play upon me. So he's like, look, you can't even play on a little recorder. Why the hell do you think you can get all of my secrets out of me? You cannot play me in the same way that you think you could. Lovely scene, really good for a whole bunch of stuff, especially about like manipulation control. Think about this as well in relation to that instrument and agent quote that I've given you before from Johnson. Okay. Polonius comes in, and at this point, Hamlet's just clearly just done with everybody. He's having one of those days at this point. He's also kind of excited at this point. He basically thinks he's got proof, which perhaps might explain why he is now so kind of cocky, and why he's so just willing to kind of mess around with characters, is that he feels that he has, to some extent or another, the proof that he needs to essentially kind of punish the king. So he starts. He's already confronted Rosencrantz and Guildenstern here. He then directly confronts, messes around with Polonius. Polonius comes in obviously to repeat the instruction that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have just offered, and then Hamlet just starts messing around with this cloud. He says, "Do you see yonder cloud?" Now we have no idea where this cloud is. Is it inside? Is it not? Is Hamlet imagining it? Is it out of a window? Who knows? Maybe he's pointing out through the roof of the theatre, which would be quite nice. And Polonius is like, yep, that cloud looks like a camel. And then Hamlet's like, actually, no, it looks like a weasel. And then Polonius is like, yep, weasels are good. This looks like a weasel. And then Hamlet's like, no, it's a whale. And you get the idea. Hamlet is basically just messing around. Yeah, he's testing, I suppose, Polonius's sycophancy. He's testing the lengths to which Polonius goes to kind of stay, keeping get the control out of him. And then Polonius is just kind of done. Hamlet just tells him to go. Everyone goes, and then we have a soliloquy. It's a soliloquy. This is a soliloquy. It's short, as you can see. Only how many lines is that? Probably just over like 15, maybe. It's not a long one, but it is quite aggressive. Hamlet now full of purpose and duty. 'Tis now the very witching time of night, so past beyond midnight, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breaks out contagion to this world. Now could I drink hot blood? Could, obviously there, he's not saying that I am going to drink hot blood, he just says that he could. And do such business as the bitter day would quake to look on. Soft now to my mother, O heart, lose not thy nature. Let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. Unnatural, obviously, to kill. Think back to my most foul and unnatural murder there. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. My tongue and soul in this be hypocrites. How in my words, somever she be sent to give them seals. Basically, what he's saying here, guys, just to break it down, Hamlet is going, look, say nasty things to your mum. Don't do nasty things to her. Don't kill her. Just say mean things. I would really highlight the line about daggers. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. It's a nice metaphor. It's a nice image anyway. You can use it, but specifically, it's a metaphor that Gertrude uses in Act 3, Scene 4. Directly links back to this idea. She talks that Hamlet's words are daggers to her ears. So that's really good. Just as a kind of side note there. Reference to Nero, Roman emperor, killed his mum. Generally a very bad man. Again, pretty obvious reference. Loads of classical references in this scene. Again, the footnotes will cover that for you. Okay. Hamlet again seems to, just a bit as a point to point out here, Hamlet seems to really want to stay away from this kind of revenging hero. He doesn't want to be the violent, aggressive hero like Pyrrhus from that quote from the Aeneid that he gets the actors to read out earlier. He does not want to be covered in blood. He is trying to be as safe as he can be. Now, I've got 12 minutes left. Cool. So, Act 3, Scene 3. I'll take any questions at the end for Act 3, Scene 2 now, because Act 3, Scene 3 needs a little bit of talking about. So, we open Act 3, Scene 3 with a conversation between the king and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Now, the king here is speeding up his plan to send Hamlet to England. Yeah, he to England shall along with you. Now, again, at this stage, we don't know whether he's... Well, we know probably by this stage that the king has already decided Hamlet's going to die. You know, as soon as he gets to England, he will be executed. So he doesn't say that yet. We'll get to that in Act 4. But that decision's been made. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are clearly aligned with him here, both of them repeating him. Both of them now talk about what they are going to do for him. And they make two kind of, again, this idea of like sycophancy. And this whole scene, guys, is going to be looking at issues of power and control and sin and punishment. We're going to be the two kind of dominant themes for this scene. Now, it's a bit of AO3 at this point, guys. Both of these speeches here, the one from Rosencrantz, obviously longer, as traditionally to the play. Guildenstern tends to speak, shorter sections. Both of them give a kind of reassurance as to power and the importance of the king in society. Yeah, Guildenstern refers to the body as the king as a kind of almost like a weird piece of flesh that like parasites feed off, which is gross. And Rosencrantz gives us a kind of more elaborate image of the king in society, kind of taking the role of the center of a wheel, the hub of a wheel. He gives this image that essentially majesty, essentially, like a golf doth draw what's near it. It says it is a massy wheel, like a big wheel on the summit of a massive mountain, upon whose spokes live all the kind of people of a country. So basically, the king is this giant wheel. The people live in the spokes. Obviously, if the wheel breaks, if he dies, then that's it for everybody else. That's them done for. Yeah, the wheel smashes, everyone goes down and dies with it. Again, to reaffirm this AO3 link here, I will quickly point you towards the image that will be on your document here. That way, the Great Chain of Being, which is this delightful thing here. God all the way down. Oh, bad people down there. But folk here, the king at the heart of it. Yeah. So we've had that idea before. So nothing new there, hopefully. But again, thinking about this idea of the importance of the monarch within society. Yeah. As well as that, the anxieties expressed here about the cessation of majesty, wherever that line is. There it is. The ending of majesty, i.e. the death of a monarch. Again, guys, context, easy context there, but the growing anxiety about the death of Queen Elizabeth I. Remember, this play is written within a couple of years of her death. So nice and easy AO3 content there for you. Okay. Super straightforward. Good stuff. So there you go. Polonius comes in and goes, yep, I'm doing the plan that we've said we're going to do 3 times now. Here it is. Off I go. Hide behind a curtain. I definitely won't get killed there. And then the king is like, that's fine, thank you. The last lines that King and Polonius speak to each other. There you go. So, the king then has his soliloquy. This is the first soliloquy for any character other than Hamlet in the play. And it's the first of the king's 2 soliloquies that we see. Now, again, slightly debatable as to whether the whole of it is a soliloquy. Hamlet does turn up towards the end of it, so maybe it's not all a soliloquy. Maybe Hamlet hears some of it, but I'm not really sure. Probably not supposed to. Again, watch productions. They'll tell you more than I can on that note. But the king kind of goes through a couple of things. This idea of, specifically this idea of sin and punishment here, very, very, very important. So the king kind of acknowledges his guilt. He talks about his offence being rank. Obviously, his offence murdering his brother. not a good one. And he says it smells to heaven, it hath the primal eldest curse upon it. So for some context, that is a reference to the story of Cain and Abel in the Bible. The first murder that ever happened. Ever. And it cursed Cain's family for ages. He suffered, and it's this kind of link to how kind of gross and corrupt the king is. He's done this the worst of crimes almost, and he's trying essentially to kind of get rid of this guilt. He essentially, is caught thinking about this. He's kind of ruining himself. He gives his references: "Cursed hand were thicker than itself with brother's blood. Is there not enough rain in the sweet heavens to wash it away?" Basically, he can't get himself clean of this kind of horrible sin that he's committed. Okay. Whereto says mercy, like to confront the visage of offence. So he's like, I can't get away from this. I can't escape this. And he's trying to pray. So he's in this scene then tries to pray to be pardoned for this crime. He's like, I will try and get rid of this sin from me. Obviously his fault, as he says, my fault is past, I've done it already. He's like, but what form of prayer can do this? He's like, forgive me my foul murder, is that enough? That prayer's probably not enough, he says, and that can't be. And here gets into the real complexities, which is why I've got these themes of like power and sin and whatever, is that he still got all the things that he did the murder for. He says, those effects for which I did the murder, my crown, mine own ambition, and my queen. He's basically, he's done the crime and he's got the rewards. Like, he's happy with that, but he's not happy with obviously the guilt. And he's like, can I be pardoned? Can I say sorry and still keep all the stuff? It's can I go to prison and keep all the stuff that I stole? Imagine if you were done for shoplifting or whatever. And he's like, look, and this is where we get some real distinctions, guys. Some kind of like comments on the corrupt nature of society, Machiavellianism, whatever, power, juxtaposed to heaven. He says, look, in the corrupted currents of this world, i.e. when you're alive, offence's gilded hand, i.e. powerful rich people, can shove by justice and basically just buy, as I say, buy out the law. Yeah, you can't be touched. He's a king, whatever. But in heaven, above, there is no shuffling. The action lies in his true nature, and we are compelled. We are so compelled. Blah 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 blah. Basically, you are held accountable for your actions. Yeah. Which is a really interesting idea, that the king himself seems to be caught in this kind of twofold kind of troubled situation. He wants to kind of apologize in this, but he was aware that he can't. He knows that he can't really go to heaven while he's still king, but he also kind of wants to be. Good question, Milo. Why does he bother praying in the first place? Good question. It's really tough to answer. It seems like he wants redemption, and it's something that he wants, but he can't. It's almost like he feels bad for what he's done. Yeah, it's almost like he feels bad for what he's done, and that he's kind of worried about his immortal soul as such. But yeah, no, it's a really good question. What we'll get to in a second is that ultimately, but at the end of this, he realizes that it's kind of a hollow gesture. Okay, right, guys, we've got about 5 minutes to go, so let's get to the end of the scene. But yeah, I will go through a fuller answer to that at the end of the scene, because it will, hopefully the end of it will give us some more context. So he keeps going. He's like, the more I try to get out of this murder and sin, the more I'm kind of struggled and try. Is actually trying to pray in the first place making me worse of a person? Who knows? Now Hamlet comes in. He's like, oop, here he is. Now I could do it. Now I could kill him. Yeah, but he's a praying, and if I do it now, then he'll go to heaven. And he's like, that's not good enough for me. Yeah, that would be actually not fair enough. I want him to suffer more. Yeah. He's like, nope, I want him to go to hell. Yeah, he says, I, the soul son, I can't send him to heaven while my dad's in purgatory. Yeah, now obviously, confessional sins, it's a tricky issue, but Hamlet's like, no, I really want him. I'm going to kill him when he's doing something gross and sinful and bad, and I'm going to murder him then, and when he's, as he says, fit and seasoned for his passage to hell. Yeah, he will get him, and he will send him onwards. His heels may kick at heaven, and that his soul may be as damned and black as hell whereto it goes. So Hamlet is like, I just want this guy to suffer. I don't want him to have any redemption. I just want him to be in pain and suffering for the rest of eternity, which is pretty harsh. And then he's off. He's like, Hamlet's like, right, I'll do it later. I've got to go talk to my mother now. We'll kill this guy later when he's doing something much worse. Again, this could be this is a scene where crucially can be used for procrastination, but I don't think it's procrastination because Hamlet doesn't want to do it. It's like Hamlet wants to kill him worse. He wants to give him the worst possible death. The irony is that the king's last lines, and it's the rhyming, well, it's not a rhyming couplet, but it's this kind of ending scene. My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts, never to heaven go. So he's like, actually, I've said all this stuff. Sorry, guys. I've said all this stuff, but actually, this isn't going anywhere. None of this is going to heaven. Yeah. I'm just gonna stay here. And this is a hollow prayer. The prayer didn't work, basically. Yeah, that's that. So Hamlet basically could have killed him, and that would have been that. So there's a bit of dramatic irony at the end here, and the fact that none of these characters can really hear what each other are saying. It's quite a nice bit. It works really well to see this kind of, I suppose, kind of Hamlet's irony. Now, just before we go, guys, I'm going to draw your attention to a nice bit of AO5 in the document. So on this scene, Samuel Johnson said as follows. He says, this speech in Hamlet, in which Hamlet represented as a virtuous character is not content with taking blood for blood, but contrives damnation for the man that he would punish, is too horrible to be read or to be uttered. So he essentially here, Hamlet, for Johnson here, Hamlet's actions are just too gross, too hideous. He's like, I can't get on board with a character who wants to do this. I can't get on board with a character who would actively want somebody else to be damned, taking revenge. I've realised there's a mistake on the document, guys. I've changed that. The AO3 there should talk about Francis Bacon's revenge issue. But yeah, I mean, the key thing to remember here, though, guys, is fundamentally, look, Samuel Johnson's writing in 1765. It's a very different society. I think a lot of audiences now don't really care whether the king is punished, and think most actually audiences kind of would celebrate that idea, seemingly. But Hamlet, for Johnson, too grim. That's too much for him. Okay, so hopefully this explains it, that the king realizes that he can't actually pray. He realizes that it's a kind of futile gesture, and he's like, fine, I will just commit to getting rid of Hamlet. We'll move on with that. Hopefully that was good. If you have any questions as to any of that, guys, I will address them via text chat in the group chat. Obviously, hopefully, if you could give me as well any feedback, any comments or whatever it is, that would be really useful, just so that I can make these streams better next week. I will also very quickly make sure that please could you guys get yourselves subscribed to the channel. I'm not going to do the full YouTuber stuff here, but if you could subscribe to the channel at least, that would be really good, because I'm going to try, when I get a bit more time, start making some smaller kind of tutorial stuff about how to use AO5 and things like that a little bit better. Okay, so as a quick reminder then, hopefully that was all really useful. Got to keep remembering, yes, over here, yeah. So this week, guys, remember, go over those scenes again using the prezzies that I've sent out to you already. Most of the stuff I've talked about today has kind of come from the prezzies. Revise the dumb show essay, that's in chat anyhow, and then complete that Polonius question. We've only got one more scene of Polonius left, and he dies in it, so you've got all the material in the play to do. You've got a bunch of quotes on Polonius anyhow. So hopefully that is that. Thank you for coming, guys. Thank you for tuning in. As I said, all feedback really, really helpful. This is my first one of these, so should be all right. Okay, guys. Thank you very much.